Okay, so handing over to you, Benoit, I will let you introduce yourself on the panel as well.
Thank you, Beatrice. Hello, everyone. So I'm Benoit Miribel. I'm here on behalf of the Foundation One Sustainable Health for All, which is now under the aegis of Institut Pasteur. And this foundation is supporting two main activities. The first one is Forum, One Sustainable Health Forum, the link between One Health and the SDGs. It was launched 2 years ago, and we have a publication. This is the image on the one side, what we used to call the One Health, traditionally human, animal health, going with all the climate issues, environmental, biodiversity, and this is what we try to do through this forum to have the different families discussing through international working group, and then each organization implement what they could do with the support of their donors and partners. And we have, in addition to that, also a coalition, One Europe for Global Health, and currently, right now, with some MPs in Brussels, discussion about the new mandate of the Commission and how we could have the link between the Green Deal, for example, and health issues. Always, you know, this approach, global approach. So I'm very pleased to be with you and to moderate this roundtable. So for this roundtable, we have 4 very experimented actors in the field. So we have Runa. I see Runa, see you, hello. She's a founder and director general of Friendship. And Runa, as we know, Friendship is really invested in the field, in different regions of Bangladesh. We have also Xavier Castellanos, Under Secretary General for National Society Development and Operations Coordination at the Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. We have also Cheikh Mbow. Hello, Cheikh. I see you from Dakar, I guess.
Oui.
Okay, bonjour à toi.
Dakar. Yes, thank you.
Cheikh is the director of the Centre d'Ecologie, Ecological Center in Senegal. And we have also Jérôme Oberreit, who is BRAC Global Executive Director. So we'll speak about Bangladesh, about Africa also, and we know that the Red Cross, Red Crescent is about 191 countries. So we are going to have field examples. So we will have two rounds of discussion together. The purpose is to come back to what was said just now and what climate action does, especially to mitigate, to adapt, facing this devastating effect of climate temperature rise. So I suggest that as a start for all of you, in few minutes, 2-3 minutes, you can explain already what you are doing, what your organization does concretely in the field, and with the main obstacles, because we know that we have to fight and to adapt to these climate issues, but there are obstacles, and we will see together how we can, move forward. So we are going to start with you, Runa. So you used to say that Bangladesh has to deal with several issues. So you can you work on all the SDGs priorities somehow, and so concretely between local, national, and international issues to accelerate, because this is the purpose of the discussion, to scale up. How do you see the way to scale up what you are doing? So first, explain us concretely how your organization with your team, and of course, because I know that dignity is at the heart of what you are doing, so always empowering local beneficiaries. How do you work concretely, and how you think we could scale up?
Thank you very much, Benoit. And I want to thank you all for making me part of this. Good afternoon. And accelerating climate action, and that's goodness, because I've been trying to do that for 22 years. And I'm therefore honored to be here with all of you today. So walking among the communities on river islands and shores, actually, I saw people, whose lives were quite unimaginable, because these were islands, part of Bangladesh, millions of people. Somehow, either the government forgot about them at one point, or somehow they could not bring services because these were such challenging climatically, geographical, and political, economic, social system there. It was very, very difficult. And working there, I remember when I first took the ship, I wanted to start with health, because I find that the most, if one is not sound in health, there is nothing which can be done. Empowerment goes out of the window and education goes out of the window. You just want to be cured. So we started with health. And it was, these were the frontliners of climate change, I didn't realize it at that time. Now I know that by 2050, there'll be every 1 in 7 people in Bangladesh, which would be about like 18, 20, 30 million people in Bangladesh, would all be climate migrants, and because we are 7th in the IPCC list, but foremost in demography, impact on demography. And, we keep hearing of the enormous cost that should be paid in loss and damage in Bangladesh. I mean, $4 billion or something like that, contributing to only 0.56% of carbon. But the thing is that, the demands of money for loss and damage cannot give you what we honestly need. Because I will tell you things which are how we had to work and the people who were impacted. Let me tell you about lives, because it's not only money. It is about people's conscience, which we need to arouse before we go into loss and damage. So I started with healthcare, and the whole thing snowballed. Healthcare systems were introduced, disasters came, and we couldn't let the people die, lack of food, relief, rehabilitation. And then how did they take off in their life? We needed to ensure that they had access to finance. So we started a very new concept of climate financing, which was called transitional fund, because there is a gap. And I worked on this with the Luxembourg government for years, that I don't want relief funds. I don't want development funds. There is this gap which we need to fill between the two, because otherwise you have a beautiful house given to you as a rehabilitation. You have no money, or you don't know where to go because you've migrated and you don't know your ecosystem. So there is an in-between, and we call it the transitional funding, where we give grants, teach people how to multiply their grants within 2 years, so that they have some money with which they can either go to microfinance or they can start their life. So this transitional funding was very important, and even this was after that, the people knew what demands came on them with microfinance. So they had they could understand their economic system. We also realized that this was not enough, because people needed hope, and there were islands where you could not even, people didn't have money to cross to the mainland. So the river is like 30 kilometers broad, and in that you have the river flowing, quite different from Switzerland, okay? You have the river flowing at 14 knots on sandy water, on sand soil. So it was like 14 knots. Yeah, it would flow at 14 knots. So it was a kind of always being remade, broken, erosion, and rebuilt again. And that was the life and people moving in the last 20 years, especially. People have moved 40 times in their lifetime, losing everything. How do you bring hope to people like this? First of all, the way that you give relief, you need to ensure that you give it with dignity. We must never take away their self-respect and dignity in the way we give. So I think that has been a kind of a central thread in all our work. But people also needed education. So we started, for migrant communities, how do you give education when you cannot even find one person who can read and write in that community? So we started taking people from the community who could just read, write barely, and train them as teachers. And mobile schools which can move with the children, as with mobile health, as with relief and rehabilitation. Everything was built on mobility because climate migrants need that.
Yes. So you
So
underline
one-
especially the community capacity.
This is it.
Face
You know,
climate issues and adaptation.
yes. And so, you see, let me tell you that
I
the
will come
people.
back to you soon, Runa,
Okay.
because we need to do a
Thank
little
you.
round
Yeah.
before. And I will
I'm
have
sorry.
I will have a question for you after that, if you don't mind. So Xavier Castellanos, with the Red Cross, Red Crescent, you are in many countries. So you work with the local communities, national and international. So how do you see the appropriation of this big challenge facing climate issues?
Thank you. Thank you. I was enjoying very much Runa in her presentation, and just to say thank you for the invitation. You know, when we talk about appropriation, when we go, the more local that we are, you have to see culture, values, beliefs, capacities, and how that dynamic connects with scientific knowledge, and how things at the same time connect in terms of what does respect also local wisdom. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges of connecting what is the scientific knowledge and connecting what is the local wisdom. So when we talk about, and I was listening before about vulnerability and capacity assessment, and I was listening before about the solutions. If there is something that we are trying to put greater attention is to say, where do you see the value in terms of very local level issues that affects communities around multi-hazard, and how you link them with issues of climate and environment? And I think that's a key component. And it is not an easy task, right? Because we can have one solution for all, or we can have local solutions to local understanding of their problems that are interconnected with socioeconomic pressures that also communities have. And that's why it's important to see the interlinks between what we want to achieve with one topic and how it's affecting others. And I think that the work of the Red Cross, Red Crescent around the globe is trying to connect those elements, right? When we talk about the Red Cross, we say, okay, we have a presence in 188,000 local branches or geographies. Mm. But when we talk about local communities, we have to understand what is the cultural values in there. So as a Red Cross, we are dealing with, I would say, with our 3 R's in terms of how we are trying to address. The first one is respond. Response to climate crisis. Just to give you an example, this year, for first time, we activated an insurance for the DREP, for the Disaster Response Emergency Fund, that was related to weather events. It's the first time that we do it. So that gives us an understanding of how response becomes a critical issue. The second one is about resilience, right? How we can bring resilience in terms of bringing nature-based solutions as an opportunity, bringing elements of regreening the urban actions, et cetera, et cetera. And the third one is the respect. Respect communities, and this links to what I started mentioning before. And that element of the respect will trigger the difference between what we call political will versus reality of action. And I think increasing awareness on that is one of the biggest challenges that we are trying to build up in the work that we are doing. And there are many, many practices of national societies. And I finish with this because already I know that we have 20 seconds left. You know, the power of youth. We launched a limitless initiative with the youth on environment and climate, etc. The first one that we had 2,000 applicants, and they are innovators of ideas around climate. This year we launched in May, and we have 10,000 applicants. So involving youth for ideas and innovators, incubators of change, will change a culture around environmental and climate.
Thank you, Xavier, for raising the point of the youth generation capacities to face this big challenge. Cheikh and Mbow is online. Where did you get support to accelerate what you have to do in Senegal and in the region? Where come your capacity to act, and how do you act efficiently?
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Benoit. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the Climate Action Accelerator for inviting me a second time to share views and prospects in relationship to climate change solutions. Thank you for the question, Benoit. Before I go to your question, it's good to know how CSC, Centre de Suivi Ecologique, was created in Senegal. CSC is created following up the 2 series of mega drought in the Sahel. There was one mega drought in the 70s, which you all know about, the Sahel drought, and the second one happened in 82. And since then, there was a series of drought and flooding and climate extremes, etc. So when the Senegalese government came to the United Nations to ask for support, what they only tell them is that you can't manage something you can't measure. You need to have evidence, you need to have data. And I was so pleased during the presentation of the Climate Accelerator to hear about the prospect of the future, the best tools and framework, the solution hub, all the toolkits. CSC is about is doing this kind of work. Now coming back to the concept of acceleration, before I go to some examples and the barriers, we don't think acceleration alone is a sufficient concept to create the transformation. I take the analogy of a car. You accelerate because you have confidence on your brakes. You accelerate because you have confidence on your wheel direction, and also for the gear change. So you accelerate if you are sure you can stop if the future is not so clear. You accelerate if you think you have to change the direction, etc. There's a number of conditions that comes off with acceleration, which shape our mindset in establishing a climate project in West Africa in the Sahel. And by the way, we established in Senegal, but we cover 15 countries. And now with the Green Climate Fund and Adaptation Fund, we even cover some countries such as Burundi, Zambia, Madagascar, and other countries. So our action, our activity, try to move from the status quo and the domain of comforts in responding to climate change, as Mrs. Khan said, to look for new behavior and long-term benefits of our solution. That's number one. The second thing is that we're trying to embrace the radical change that the accelerator is trying to put in place by trying to embrace a dynamic risk assessment process, because risk is evolving. The presentation before I came to the meeting about markets and all the things that we are talking are other kind of exposure. It's a multi-risk, multi-crisis arena we are building our solution from. It's not only climate. Climate is concomitant with various other risks, and that risk is evolving, and appraising that risk and harnessing the solutions across the changing environment is something which is not easy to do, and you can see it from Climate Accelerator. The second point is that we also try to shift from the knowledge cycle to the action cycle. And in the action cycle, that's where I will respond to your question, Benoit. is that's where we go to get our accreditation. The UNFCCC have set in place multilateral institution for financing climate change. Those institutions never get the resources that they need, but there is some resources. And to get those resources, you need long processes to write a proposal. The last proposal which we submit for GCF, $10 million, which is quite important for solar energy and family farming agriculture in Senegal, has taken us a lot of energy and a lot of investment upfront. Nobody is giving us that upfront investment. We have to look for it. Because, you know, the key to access the financing, that key is not, nobody questioned that key. How do we get it in order to jump the fence and go look for the resources? So there is challenges in the Green Climate Fund because the projects are very complex and demanding. The Adaptation Fund, GCA, but CSC has managed down the line to unlock those potential and to bring investment into local communities. The point here, which before I move to my next point and try to finish for sake of time, is that the time we spend to build project, that time is critical for the survival of communities. When Khan talk about flooding in Bangladesh, they don't need to wait 4 years for a project to happen, for them to respond to their flooding issues. It's the same for heat stress. It's the same for dust stress. It's the same for coastal erosion. We need to act quickly. So the window of action is very short, but there is also something else, which is very short in terms of action, is how do we narrow down the process of getting the knowledge to develop those kind of project. And in terms of barriers, which is the last point I want to make, there is a few barriers which I want to mention. The presentation, I forget the name of the person who was talking about tendering and market. We cannot just keep climate solution related to market logics, the cost, the benefits, the neoliberal processes. Climate change is overarching goal of humankind, and we should find ways to speed up the process of bringing the solution without being too much tied up with market processes, which are locking ourselves into the process. The other thing is technical. When people think about technical, they think about normative solutions, imported solutions from Europe. In Africa, for millennia, the Sahara has been drying out. Many drought has happened. A lot of local solutions exist, and I like the IDRC, la Fédération de la Croix, no, la Croix-Rouge et le Croissant-Rouge, the director who speak about the local reality and the local aspiration and local behavior. That's where the solution and the transformation and the acceleration will lie on at the last end of the process. And finally, Benoit, to stop there, is that the time window of the solutions will not support our ability to respond to the growing concern. Let me explain. If we wait for 2 degrees, the solution that we customize now for 1.5 degree or 2 degree will be different. So we need to, if we wait too long, agroforestry, the potential, for instance, of agroforestry to respond to 1.5 degree will be different to the potential of 1.5 agroforestry to respond to 2 degrees. So we have to think of the delayed response and the cost, the ecological cost, the climate cost, the financial cost of not responding now.
Clearly.
So
Yeah,
thank you so much for those barriers, and I will come back to give more details if you will. All the best.
Thank you, Cheikh, for making clear your expectations and recommendations. Now, Jérôme Oberreit from BRAC Global, the Executive Director. Following the discussion, jumping in the discussion, the different points that were raised, how do you, what does it mean to mainstream climate action in support to service delivery in a country like Bangladesh for an organization such as BRAC?
So thank you very much, Benoit. Thank you to the Climate Accelerator. And I'd just like to also remind that BRAC is not just in Bangladesh, we're in 15 countries, but we were founded in Bangladesh in the early 70s, along with Bangladesh, in fact, and as a response to the cyclone Bola, which itself killed 300,000 people at the time. It's often forgotten, but what the founders saw is that the loss of life was mainly due to poverty, an inability to be resilient, to adapt. And over the years, we've supported over 9 million people to move out of poverty through what we call the Triple Graduation Program. And this program has been taken over by a number of NGOs and some governments. But as we strive to create a reality where everyone can reach their potential, we clearly see that all the work that we've done is being put at risk with the climate change that we're seeing. The progress that we've made, and then I'd like to point to what Runa says, in the past 50 years, has been lost, or a danger of being lost, for the very women and families that live in extreme poverty, first and foremost. And the achievements face a massive threat from this climate change. Now, a country like Bangladesh, along with many of the other countries in Africa and Asia where we work, where the Federation is all placed and where Cheikh is coming from, really at the front line of this crisis. And those I've met in the coastal areas in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, all say the same thing. In their lifetime, they've seen the changes. And these are young people, these are young farmers. And the farmers are seeing unreliable rainfalls. The businesses are seeing unreliable markets because there's less production, salinity is coming in. Actually, populations are moving out, which is creating challenges for their market. And women are forced to use salt water in the coastal areas for cooking and bathing, creating issues in terms of chronic diseases. Now, the climate change really threatens all the programs, and many of the programs have been proven. As Cheikh has said, we've got a degrading baseline here, and actually a lot of the work that we've been doing has been much measured against a steady baseline. I've only got 2 minutes left, so I've got to actually move forward. Part of what we're doing today is about what the populations need today. But in fact, it's no way near what they will need in a year's time, let alone 5 years' time, 10 years' time, or 15 years' time. So many of the programs that we've identified, the ultra poor graduation, we studied this, and yes, they are making people more resilient today, but there is no proof that they're making people more resilient down the road in terms of where we're going. But we're introducing, as the IFRC is doing in our microfinance programs, index-based insurance for farmers. Health programs are really looking to do a lot of what the accelerator is doing in terms of both facilities, but also looking at heat-prone areas and how to be able to provide good health provision in that increased reality, heat increased reality. And to do all this, over the years since 2016, we've created a climate change strategy in the organization, a resilience framework, and 2 years ago, a climate hub, which is fully dedicated to developing tools for program managers to consider in how they can deal with climate risks in their design program. Now, mainstreaming practice has typically been about meeting people where they are, but the challenge of what we've talked about, the longer term, really requires what I would call deep adaptation, or actually what Bruno mentioned earlier, which is very radical changes, which means we need to be able to look at a number of issues where we need to be upstream in terms of plan relocation. Bangladesh is between the melting ices of the Himalayas and the rising water of the Bay of Bengal, with 160 million, one of the most densely populated areas in between. We need to be ahead of the curve in terms of how people are going to be relocated with dignity. We need to look at loss of fresh water. What are the ways and the tools that can be scaled? The latest technology, how can we adapt that at the very household level? And livelihoods, where we need to look at maybe some of the old ways, old crops like Fonia in West Africa, which is actually far less water intensive, or insects, which are actually high protein, and compared to a lot of other protein sources, can feed actually the world of tomorrow. But this is actually change that cannot be done overnight. It's a long haul change, and it has to be worked with communities. And I think, as Xavier was saying, with the best of science that's out there. So I'll stop there because I see my 1 minute is gone, and I've got plenty more to say.
Thank you, Jérôme. So we see that the organizer invited the diversity of organization. If we take Runa, Friendship, IFRC, Crescent, BRAC, and our friend in Senegal, but you all converge. You are all forced to adapt the activity with local community, you converge. But I have a question for you, Runa. I remember we were together in a round table at the COP26 in Glasgow, and it was about governments asking where goes the money for climate issues. and asking you the question because you are at the last mile, you are in the field. You remember the debate. So apparently, there is money. There is money internationally for climate adaptation issues. But there is a question of how to do the interlink, where are the pipes, the bridges? And I would like to know, Runa, since that debate, if you see things moving. For those who don't know you very well, Runa is always moving. So she speaks with president of in Davos, in the field, everywhere. So you have a good vision of what is at stake and what you recommend, because we need to accelerate.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, moving, not very environmentally friendly. So, you know, I try to kind of try to ease my conscience a bit, saying that, okay, we need to have solidarity also of understanding and know-how. There is money. You know, as I said, that for Bangladesh, they keep this loss and damage, which is very big, and we do need that. But I think before that, there is the question of conscience. I think I need people to have more conscience. And in that conscience, you have to then perhaps help to mitigate climate change a bit. On the other hand, there is the question of mitigating climate change, which is a long-term vision. Even today, it's a long-term vision. As you know, as Jérôme said, 2% is not going to help. And we actually, what we need in ourselves is agility. So we have to really, really spring on that. Continuously, at the end of the day, which I think Xavier said, it was very good that people, you know, you are at the front line. You are the ones that 2 days or 3 days of disaster, all you can do is, we can't do anything. Even being near the field, we can't do anything. We have to prepare the community to do it. They are the ones who need, you know, who are the first line of relief rehabilitation. So we have to prepare them. So preparedness is very important. Money, there is money. The point is, where is the money? You know, it's a bit elusive, because Bangladesh has got very, very good local players. Okay, we have very good local players. Then when we think of localization of funding so that it can reach directly, there is a lot of misnomer here. And I feel that the name localization has to change, because actually the partnership needs to work as a global team rather than a north-south team. Unless that happens, neither the giving of the money is going to be fair, nor is the implementation ever going to be fair, because enough funds are not coming to the ground and is not getting well administered whence on the ground, because there's no money for administration at the local level. So we need to ensure, we have to ask ourselves, what is actually, I mean, you know, if you just give money for a project, you might as well take a plane and throw the money. People will make use of the money. You know, it is how you maximize efficiency, how you have agility, how you bring in tools, how you incorporate local knowledge so that it works and people internalize what you give to them, be it knowledge, be it tools, be it whatever. If this doesn't happen, then you have not built anything. It is not going to be sustainable. So money, the giver is as responsible for the money as the receiver. They both need to understand and respect each other and know that what I can do, the person who is giving me the money at this point of time cannot do that. I can do it better. He can make the money better. I can implement the work better. So this respect needs to be there, you know, and otherwise, however much there is money in the field, we don't see, one doesn't see it. I mean, we do, but not enough.
Thank you, Runa. I see Cheikh moving, reacting. A very short Cheikh, since it will be also very short for Jérôme and José, before giving the possibility to the participants to ask questions to you. Cheikh,
Thank
rapidement,
you.
tu veux réagir?
Oui, c'est à moi.
Oui, si tu as une phrase rapide.
Just une phrase rapide. I have a very quick submission, and I totally agree with Runa. The first thing is to know if the money that is, put in place to respond to climate change is enough to the magnitude of problems that we are facing, particularly in the global south. Where the money is going is also extremely critical. There have been this pledge of 100 billion for years. It's never happened. There is a lot of tribulation about mobilizing the funding from mitigation, the 2% of mitigation money going, so they never happen. And at the same time, to get the minimum seed funding that is available there, it's really hard and harsh. The last point in my one phrase is also to make sure that the investment does not come into very short term. Climate solution adaptation is not 2 years, 3 years project. It's 15 years, 20 years commitment and permanent engagement to investing into the solutions to move forward. Over to you.
Thank you, Cheikh. Jérôme?
Okay, so I think first of all, we have to realize the partners, international partners have to realize that the ground-proofed adaptation is happening with communities and is happening in the global south. That in fact, we need to look at these countries as global R&D hotspots that will provide solutions not just for Bangladesh, but for the rest of the world tomorrow at scale and in a frugal way. Now, we need to rethink our, some of the words and semantic. Assistance is not right as a word. We're talking here about redress, and we're talking about research in how to deal with this climate. Yet we still use word like assistance in our partnership. It's got to be a partnership of equal if we're really going to move forward, because the most innocent is the most impacted. Those that have the solutions to bring about the adaptation solutions are those that are driving the crisis and have the purses full. So there's a need of a big mind shift in terms of where we go tomorrow. I'm sure I've got something that I can end up on. Well, anyway, I'll end up there because, I think the whole narrative and the semantics are important in this debate. And we've got to re-anchor things in terms of investment and the return on investment that we will get. It's not just the right thing to do. It is the smart thing to do to invest in countries like Bangladesh. If Bangladesh doesn't make it, the rest of the world doesn't make it. If Bangladesh survives, there's a hope for the rest of the world. And I think we're just so far from that way of thinking and how we build partnerships with our global partners.
Thank you, Jérôme. Xavier, what we can do? We have a climate action accelerator working with different organizations, but how we can scale up, how we can, change really the things, because what was shown just before needs, more capacities. And you are in a big organization, having a view on many countries. You were discussing this point of interlink, silos, local, national, international. Due to your experience, what do you recommend? What we can do right now? 2 minutes.
Yeah.
No more.
You took already 5 seconds of my 2 minutes.
Mm.
Just to highlight, I think we have to change the narrative first. I think we have to stop talking about climate change. We need to talk about climate crisis. And just by changing the narrative, we are going to bring a different message abroad. When we look into the climate financial systems, the issue is that the money is spent more in mitigation, not in adaptation, but not for local action. And the issue of local action means the changing of the narrative is also how funding is given, the funding mechanism. I think that less than 2% really goes to local action, right, from the global fund. But when we talk about climate crisis, and that's why I'm saying it is important, the financial mechanisms are, especially the multilateral financial mechanism, are thinking on national systems. And if we continue working like that, the crisis per se of the climate will be too late to understand once the situation is out of capacity to deal with the problem. So My thinking is that if we change that narrative collectively, and we push for the financial systems in their mechanism to say it has to be climate impact related, probably we will have a more collective action.
Thank you. Now we open to the participants. If you have a question to ask to one of the speakers, please do. Just mention your name and affiliation. Yes.
So my name is Misha. I work in IUCN, which has nothing to do with the question. But my question is more that you've been talking a lot about multilaterals and institutional funding. And I'm wondering what is the role and the risks of approaching private donors, philanthropies. They might be much faster than what Cheikh has been saying in terms of needs in order to access the money, all the process that is needed. And I just wanted to hear about the private funding sector.
Yes, so the question is about philanthropy. Moving faster than sometimes than government.
The foundation of Novartis, maybe the nice foundation of
so what is
Nestlé.
What is your experience, Runa, for example, and maybe Xavier, with philanthropists compared to government funding? We are going to have a roundtable this afternoon about financing, but try to understand to answer the question. Runa, maybe I know that you have some foundation support in Bangladesh.
Yes. Actually, you know, when I first started Friendship, nobody believed in it. Conventional donors said it's impossible. You can't do what you're saying you can do. Of course, foundations also, people want to play safe. You know, there are very few organizations which they all talk about pilots and they all talk about, you know, doing new things. But actually, and what is a new thing? New thing is a risk, you know, and nobody wants to take this. Actually, I found it's a question of trust. Unless there is trust, you can't do new things. You can't really do things which is absolutely need-based, unless you can pick up the phone and you can tell the donor that we have to change it because this is not working, and the donor accepts it. So I think foundations are good. I really honor some foundations because once they are on board, they stay on board unless they lose their mandate. But somebody once asked me, when you started, how did you get funds? I said, you know, I didn't look for funds. You actually have to concentrate on the vision of what you are going to do. If that vision is very strong and you get the right partner, not the first partner, the right partner, then you are successful. And when you are successful, everybody wants to be on board. So okay. I feel that it works, but it's not easy.
I know also that some foundation, like Foundation S, they propose grants for adaptation, climate issues with health, and many foundations propose grants for that for local NGOs.
Yeah, if you allow me, because I will have to leave, sorry. But just to say on the foundations, philanthropy is good. They are more and more supporting of it. But the problem that we see is that there is not a comprehensive understanding of the problem. So you will have donors who said, I want only this particular part of a big pie. And one of the issues that we have, if we work only one particular part, and you are working with communities, and you say, yeah, but your portion doesn't pick the entire needs in the communities, in reality, the impact is very lower. So that could be another element of action point, you know, comprehensive approach at community level. And I have to apologize to the organizers and to everyone, but I think I have some very challenging meeting to follow.
Xavier, and you mentioned it goes to the alliance, the question of alliance between governmental, NGOs, foundations together, you know, maybe to also scale up capacities. But thank you for being with us. Jérôme?
And apologies.
Yes, thank you, Xavier. I think one of the key issues is whatever funding, whether it's from private, whether it's from government, it needs to be flexible, because if we work in a partnership, for instance, BRAC or Friendship or IFRC can start things, they get picked up by the government. we need to be able to redirect those resources very quickly, because what we started is being picked up. Yet the grant approach often prevents you from doing this because you've got to see your program straight through. So that kind of flexibility in the funding, moving away from a grant-based approach and more probably to what was synonymous to the 80s, 90s humanitarian funding, which was a lot broader, unrestricted in most part, needs to come back into the climate adaptation type of funding.
That's right. So Xavier said climate crisis. Do you have some question before we close the session? Question to Runa, to Cheikh and Mbow? So we thank you, and thank you to the speakers, the organizer. I'm leaving the floor to the team to let you know what is going to happen now. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.